The night was thick with tension. As the final bell rang from the chapel, signaling curfew, Eniola found herself lingering in the shadows of the university's main building. The moon hung high, casting an ethereal glow over the campus, but it did little to calm her racing heart. She shouldn't have come. She knew it from the moment she decided to follow Dami here. Yet, something, a feeling she couldn't quite name, had driven her. Maybe it was the look in his eyes earlier that day, or the way he had held her hand a second too long, igniting something within her that had long been buried under layers of duty and guilt. Dami wasn't supposed to be here. No one was. The night air was still, save from the distant hum of generators from the boys' hostel. Eniola leaned against the cold wall, her mind playing back events that led her to this point. The chemistry lab had been a sanctuary for her and Amara, her best friend, since they both awkwardly navigated the early days of university life. Amara was the sister she never had, and Dami, well, Dami was everything Amara had ever wanted. Tall, intelligent, and with that easy charm that made everyone's heart skip a beat. Eniola had been the supportive best friend, listening to Amara's daydream, offering advices, and being a rock. That was until the day Dami started looking at her differently. It had been subtle at first, a lingering glance during group study sessions, a quick smile when Amara wasn't looking. Eniola had brushed it off, chalking it up to her imagination. But as the days turned into weeks, the tension between them grew thicker, impossible to ignore. She felt it in the way he sat closer to her, his arm occasionally brushing against her, sending shivers down her spine. She noticed it in the way he sought her out in the cafeteria, his eyes locking with hers, silently communicating things neither of them dared to speak aloud. She had tried to distance herself, had even gone as far as to suggest to Amara that maybe Dami wasn't interested, trying to deflate her hopes gently. But Amara, ever the optimist, laughed it off, insisting that he's just too shy, that it was only a matter of time before he asked her out. But it wasn't Amara he had asked to meet him tonight under the pretense of discussing an upcoming project. It was Eniola. She hadn't told Amara, hadn't even hinted at it. How could she? The guilt gnawed at her, but so did the curiosity. What did he want to say that couldn't wait till tomorrow? That couldn't be said in the light of day? Eniola was torn between loyalty and the undeniable pull she felt toward him, a pull that she had tried so hard to ignore. Footsteps echoed in the quiet, pulling her from her thoughts. Eniola's breath itched as Dami emerged from the darkness, his expression unreadable. He wore a simple black polo and jeans, his usual casual attire, but there was something about the way he moved tonight, with a determined purpose that sent a wave of unease through her. Eni, he greeted, his voice low, almost cautious. He stepped closer, his eyes searching hers, and for a moment neither of them spoke. The air between them buzzed with unspoken words, with all the things they were too afraid to admit. Dami, she replied, her voice betraying the nervousness she felt. She crossed her arms as if the gesture could somehow shield her from what was coming. I didn't mean to drag you out here, he began, running a hand through his ear, a telltale sign of his own nerves. But I needed to talk to you, alone. About what? Eniola asked, though she already had an inkling. She had been avoiding this conversation for weeks, knowing that it would only complicate things, knowing that it would betray the one person who had been nothing but kind to her. About us, he said, his voice firm now, his eyes never leaving us. About what has been happening between us, Eniola. Nothing happened. Nothing has been happened. Eniola lied, her heart pounding in her chest. She wanted to believe it, wanted to convince herself that this was all in her head. But the look in Dami's eyes told her that he felt it too. "Eni, stop!" he said softly, taking a step closer. "We both know that is not true. I can't keep pretending that I don't feel something for you. It's been driving me crazy and I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do about it." His words hung in the air, heavy and dangerous. Eniola felt a rush of emotions, fear, desire, guilt, all tangled up in a knot that threatened to choke her. This was wrong, so wrong, but the way he was looking at her, the sincerity in his voice, made it so hard to remember. "Dami, we can't," she whispered, her voice trembling. Amara." "I know," he interrupted, his voice pained. "I know, but I can't help it, Eni. I have tried to stay away, tried to focus on Amara, but..." He trailed off, his voice dropping to the ground. But I can't." Eniola felt tears prick her eyes. This was exactly what she had feared, exactly what she had tried to avoid. But here it was, staring her in the face, and she had no idea how to handle it. She should have turned around and walked away. Should have told him that this was madness, that they needed to forget it ever happened. But instead, she found herself stepping closer, drawn to him like a moth to a flame. "Dami," she breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. He looked up, his eyes meeting hers, and in that moment, she knew she was lost. He closed the distance between them in a heartbeat, his hands reaching out to cup her cheek, his touch sending sparks through her skin. Eniola's breath caught in her throat as he leaned in, his lips brushing against hers in a tentative kiss, testing, asking for permission. She knew she should stop him, knew that this was the point of no return, but she couldn't. She didn't want to. With a soft sigh, she gave in, kissing him back, letting herself get swept away by the emotions she had kept buried for a long time. The kiss deepened, and Eniola felt herself melt into him, the world around them fading away. In that moment, nothing else mattered. No consequences, no guilt, no Amara. It was just them, lost in each other, in a moment that felt both inevitable and forbidden. But as quickly as it began, reality crashed back down on her. As she pulled away, gasping for air, her heart pounding in her chest. "What are we doing?" she whispered, her voice shaking. She took a step back, wrapping her arms around herself, trying to hold herself together. I don't know," Dami admitted, his voice filled with regret. He reached for her, but she backed away, shaking her head. "This is wrong, Dami. We can't do this. Amara, she doesn't deserve this." "I know," he said, his voice breaking. "I know, but I don't know how to stop feeling this way, Henny." Tears welled up in her eyes as she looked at him, the man who had become so much more to her than just her best friend's crush. But it wasn't enough. It couldn't be. "We have to stop," she said firmly, though her voice wavered. "We have to end this before it goes any further, before it ruins everything." Dami looked at her, his expression torn, but he nodded slowly, understanding the weight of what she was saying. "You are right," he said quietly. "We can't keep doing this." For a moment, they stood there in silence, the gravity of their decision hanging between them. Eniola felt a sharp pain in her chest, but she knew it was the right thing to do. She couldn't betray Amara like this, couldn't live with the guilt of knowing she had hurt the person who had been her closest friend. "We should go," she said finally, turning away from him, her voice thick with hunched tears. "Yeah," Dami agreed, his voice heavy. "We should." They walked away from each other, the distance between them growing with each step. Eniola could feel her heart breaking, but she forced herself to keep moving, not to look back, but she made a choice and she had to live with it. As she walked away, she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over yet, not by a long shot.